can't really measure Final Fantasy XIV by the same metrics by which you judge other games in the series. It's easier to measure 5 against a 4 or a 6, a 12 by whether it belongs alongside 9 for its intricate world building, or should be indicted for its slide toward 13. But 14's only reasonable point of comparison is 11, since they're the 2 MMO entries. When you're talking about an expansion as opposed to a genuine entry, you're adding content onto a continuing experience. You're dropping in a couple new jobs in a few new areas, probably a new sequence of missions, a new ally or two who might end up in the next theater round. Our yardstick, then, has marks of the brutal difficulty of Chains of Promethea, the rehashed wibbly-wobbly and cat-infested wings of the goddess, the rejuvenating breath of fresh air that was Seekers of Adoulin. But after spending a couple months tramping around Ishgard, it's obvious that Heavensward belongs on the far end, reserved for the best expansion of its predecessor. It only took one try for Final Fantasy XIV to find its treasures of Adoulin.
I, Count Edmond de Fortomp, do bid you welcome. As wards of House Fortomp, you shall be afforded every courtesy. My home is your home.
This is where I'd normally give some overview of the plot, but it feels kinda awkward to start in on it given the several days worth of content I still had to catch up on between the end of A Realm Reborn and the start of Heavensward. There's dozens of missions, confrontations against more primals like Leviathan, Ramu, and Shiva, all while a web of political intrigue leads to catastrophic insurrection and our heroes, the ones who make it out alive, mind, seek asylum in the frigid northern wastes of Ishgard. From there it's toe-to-toe with heretics, dragons, some pretty cool ant people, and since this is a Final Fantasy game after all, there's a strong chance that the totalitarian theocracy that runs the place just might have a hand in all of this. Call it a hunch. One of the wrinkles as concerns navigation of these brave new worlds is the preponderance of broken apart clusters of land floating amongst the clouds, which account for almost half of the new zones. Think Cape Ryvern on steroids without the ridiculous spatial displacement nonsense. They're a bit tricky to get around the first couple times, but there's a new method of transportation available. Rather, it's the same chocobo you've been riding all around Eorzea, only now it can fly. After completing a number of side quests and finding all of the Aether Current objects in a particular area, of course. And therein lies the primary complaint. There's a lot of side quests. Sure, they're worth experience points and offer several jobs worth of free gear, but every member of my LS hit a point of utter frustration with those damned Moogles and their unceasing calls for assistance with the most mundane of tasks. No wonder why they can survive out in the frontier like that. They're capable of rooking every passing adventure into several levels worth of tedium. It's a departure from the engaging nature of the main storyline, but the rewards just barely justify it. Just barely. This massive bulk of quests includes new incremental steps for getting all of your jobs from level 50 to the new cap of level 60. Heavensward continues the quality and engagement that made these little encapsulated storylines popular in A Realm Reborn. Given the subject matter and characters central to the main plot, though, the Dragoon quests can end up getting a little weird. These quests also add new abilities and functions to the combat classes to varied effect. I wasn't a huge fan of the new Bard caster stance, the most dramatic of the changes, but it eventually grew on me. Gatherers and crafters get relatively fewer new tricks, but a new collectibles system for higher tier currency and large EXP gains. It just wouldn't be a Final Fantasy MMO expansion. Well, it just wouldn't be a Final Fantasy MMO expansion that isn't Chains of Promethea without a few new jobs to mix things up a bit. Heavensward brings us a trio of new vocations, one for each role. Astrologians use star charts and a modified tarot deck to heal and buff. Machinists bust out the guns and automated turrets as a ranged attack class. And in a role that sounds weird to anyone who played enough 11, Dark Knights channeled their ennui and Papa Roach lyrics into being magic-oriented tanks. Because who could turn down a chance to beat the hell out of someone channeling ennui and Papa Roach lyrics? Much like Treasures of Adoulin, regarded as Final Fantasy XI's golden age, Heavensward brings the right mix of new areas, new features, new races, new characters, new intrigue, and new jobs, though it still falls a hair short of the holy trinity of Blue Mage, Corsair, and yes, even Puppet Master. But the most important thing to say about Heavensward isn't that it shakes things up, but that it continues the upward trajectory that A Realm Reborn started. The vast cloudscapes of the later areas certainly bring the breathtaking vistas, largely helped by your bird getting you to the highest places possible as quickly as possible. The musical accompaniment maintains the quality that's made Masayoshi Soken the rising star of the game composition world, with the intensity spiking for primal fights. But for my money, the best track is the disjointed experimental jazz of the Final Fantasy V-inspired Great Gooball Library. Part of what's made the re-emergence of Final Fantasy XIV such a success has been the constant stream of content provided free gratis just for continuing to tune in. It might seem strange then to ask money for it, but keep in mind, there's about as much plot and gameplay in Heavensward as in all of the content between the end of a Realm Reborn's plot and the beginning of its own. A progression that took shy of 2 years, all dropped on you in a lump. Yes, it's another cost on top of the game itself, on top of the subscription you're paying every month, but look at this from the other side. The only real complaints I've managed to level are that there are too many side quests and that it costs money. That should tell you all you need to know.